Hello and welcome back. So today we're going to be looking at some of the new environmentals like Skybox and some filter stuff. If you haven't seen on Discord, the developers have released a new update for new lighting. So as you can see here, got a lot more new lighting and some stuff has changed and also new skyboxes. So let's get into it. So let's start with filters. So, as we've seen before, we have our exposure, which is from 1 to 10, which is how much light is in the scene, how much light can be put into the scene kind of thing, like on a camera, where it lets in so much light. Okay, then we have all of our presets. Go through each preset, different kinds of stuff, and if you notice, it only changes the first few sliders. So, you have to kind of manually go in and change your contrast stuff and everything like that. Then we have reset tone map, which sets things back to base on all of it. So then we have our advanced settings, which is all of our lower stuff. Then we have our color grade Lut, which is just uh, it's the filter part. It changes what each color looks like, the tint of it. So if we go to like jungle, changes the blues to greens. Then let's say night turns all the like a really darker tint. We got warm, turns the greens slightly orange, and stuff like that. Then we got sinister, which turns everything really dark, dingy kind of thing. So just go to default here, so we can just have a look around. Let's just zoom out a little bit, so you can get the whole entire thing. So you can see how each one of these settings affects the scene. Okay, so let's start with white balance, which this actually shows you, or this changes on how white the whites are. If that makes any sense. So let's just like go down to here, and let's just change the uh, white point, which goes from 0.01 to 4, which I see it as 4. That's what I've only seen it go up to, even though the white can go up to like a very high arbitrary kind of number, which is just like 5,700 and 7,003, whatever. It can go up to a really big number. But I've seen that with my testing that it goes about 4 before you don't really notice any more changes. So let's see. Let's just go down to see. We go down to 0.1. This is a filter that if you go higher, it makes whites not as white. And if you go lower, it makes the white more white. So basically it's a filter that goes over the top of it. So if you stick something black over white, it'll make the white not as white. So that's what that does. Let's just bring that back up to like max, whatever, so we don't get so much white everywhere. Then we have something called mid-tone gray, which this is how bright the midtones are, or the darker areas, which this one goes from 0.04 or 0.001 to 1. You don't go to 4, it goes to 1. And it actually has a slider that goes all the way up. If you notice, everything's super white now. If you bring it all the way back down, see all the darker areas and stuff. This is like overall whiteness. Just gray tones and everything. So the lower it is, the more darker it is, and the higher it is, the more white you have. It's kind of like exposure, but yeah. So that's how that works. So let's bring it back down to like a low number. Let's go to like 0.25 or something maybe. So it's kind of lit up. Okay. Then we have our bloom threshold, which is the glare master brightness. So when we set all of our blooms up, this is going to control uh, the intensity kind of thing. So if we have it set really high, which it goes from I've actually seen on this one, it does affect it even when you go up to super high numbers, like max. So if you just put like all nines in here, it'll go all the way down to 6,000 or 65,535, which this does actually affect it, because when I was doing testing with the light here, I turned it up to super bright, and as I raised it all the way up, it made the glare less of a glare kind of thing, like the brightness less. So it does help. So let's just bring this back down to 1 or so. Then we got our inner bloom, which controls our furthest away glare, which this one goes from 0 to 2. So we can actually turn it off, or we can turn it all the way up. And with our threshold so low, let's turn it up a little bit. Zoom in. It's a lot higher. Okay, so then we got our inner bloom. We can set to 0, and then, but this is your furthest away bloom. So it's probably like back behind there. So then we got our mid bloom, which goes from 0 to 2 also. So our threshold, if you see here, if you go lower, brighter, higher, it goes lower. So let's just set it really high so we can actually see what we're doing here. So for our inner bloom, so set it 0. Set everything to 0 quick. Okay, so let's go to our inner bloom and go from 0, 1, 2. So it kind of makes everything behind everything kind of white. So let's bring it back down to 0. Here's our middle bloom, which kind of a little more in the front here. Brighter. Okay, and then let's go back down to 0. Then we got our outer bloom, which is our furthest, or our closest glare, which you can see it kind of glares it out right here. Kind of in front of the tree. Inner is on the mountains. Middle, kind of in between these tree areas. And then outer is on the tree. It just glares out even more. So let's just leave these 0 so we can actually see what we're doing. Okay, so now we went through all of our bloom settings. Now let's look at the contrast, which, if you know anything about contrast, it changes the value between light and dark. So this one only goes down to 0.96, which kind of makes everything kind of flat, where the light colors and the darker colors kind of mix. Then this actually goes up to 1.04. So it's actually really tiny little settings that you can change. So if you hit your arrow, it goes really tiny little settings. So I'm going to go like read low and changes. So that can go up to 1.0 or yeah, 1.04. Gives us a nice contrast between colors. Okay, then here's saturation, which saturation is just how colorful and rich the colors are. So, like, we have a pretty mildly rich colored scene. So, now what happens if we drop down to 0? We get completely colorless, which can give you kind of a old black and white photo kind of thing. So if you want to make something like that, kind of cool. Then it can go all the way up to 2, which is the most colorful. So a little more cartoony kind of style kind of thing. Everything's just kind of super bright, whimsical colors. Just kind of bring that back down to 1 or so. So as you can see, it kind of gets a little darker, a little more dull, saturated, or less saturated colors. Then here comes an interesting one. We got the Luminance Adaptation Speed, which this is supposed to be how fast the camera adjusts to sudden brightness and sudden darkness. So like if you're in your house, you have low lighting, so your eyes adjust to that. So when you go outside, when it's super bright outside, then it takes your eyes a few minutes to adapt to the brightness, which like on a camera, you have your sensors and stuff on it, so that like the smaller it is, the less light brings in. So um, everything's not so overexposed when you're taking photos. And when you're inside or something or in a darker area, it opens up to let a little more light in. That's kind of how this is. So the increase increases on how fast it will do it, and decrease and lowers it. But at the moment, I haven't seen on how to use it. So if anyone can tell me on how to use it, because I'm new to this too, because it was just introduced. So I'm not sure what to do with it at the moment. Then you have your average minimum and maximum luminance average, which this one I can see as so the minimum is how bright all the lights are and how long the light waves are, kind of thing. So like the luminance is like when you look at a light, you see the particles kind of like or the lighting through the air. That's the luminance versus um, the emission, which is the light bouncing off a surface. So the luminance is the actual light that's in the air, kind of thing. So like I guess you can kind of luminance and the glare mix. So the higher glare you have, the more luminance you see. So the luminance is just the light in the air, which you can change that to how high or how low it actually is. Then you got your maximum on how dark all the lights are and how short it is. So let's just change it. Let's just change it like to 1000. See, it's really dark now because the minimum is set really high, so everything's darker. And if you set it really low, then this is just kind of like maxes out what your minimum can be. So if we set it to like 5, it's not going to change anything because our minimum is a lot lower than it is our max. But if we go up to 5, then it goes up. So let's see if we go to 10. See, it's not going any much higher. It's not changing anything because it's going past our max. So the max is just to set it so how dark you're actually going to have it and just where you're going to have it on it. And then we can just set it really low and it brightens the scene back up. So that was our filter settings here. Now let's move on to the new SkyDomes. Here we go. Found a good spot to look at the SkyDomes. So with our environment we have here, we have our sun color, we have our brightness, and then we have our ambient color, which is just like the color of the sky and everything, and how it reflects on everything. So it'll be a tinge of blue. But this is what we want to look at. We want to look at the color or the SkyDomes. So we got clear sky. Okay. Then we have some clouds. Kind of look around. Got like a big cloud kind of thing over the top. We got some little clouds around. Got some clouds. Then we got overcast, which is kind of like a cloudy day that you see a little bit of the sun through. So that's a little bit, that's the overcast, which is good for overall lighting. We got stars. Got it render in here. You can see really closely all these little white specks, and then we have kind of a blue sky. So let's see if we can actually change the sky up. So what if we go to a darker color? Nope, that just changes that. Okay. Let's change it back to our really light color here. There we go. So that's just a sky dome here. So we got see the little tiny specks of white, which are stars. And let's look at fantasy stars. So this one is the moving stars. So it'll be kind of like Northern Lights kind of style kind of thing. You got your slow moving stars around things. It's kind of cool. Give more ambience to the scenes. Got empty, which is just empty world, just nothingness. Go to Polar. See what this one is. And see it kind of rendering in here. Seems like some of the sky boxes or sky domes are kind of messing up for me here. Kind of getting some weird kind of things. Let's look at Dramatic Sunset. Kind of got some purple kind of clouds in there and nice colors. Kind of cool here. Kind of looks like a mixture of some sky domes. Now it looks at Swirly Sunset. This one definitely changes stuff. Nice big swirly clouds. Looks kind of like a Chinese animation kind of thing for like kids and stuff like that. Right. Just kind of reminds me of that. It's kind of cool. Very stylized. Now the last one is Northern Lights. This one has a little more strips of stuff, and looks like we're getting some of the other SkyDomes. Not sure if this is part of CREY, that it's the problem, or if it's my computer, because I've been having a little bit of problems with my computer. But that's what this is. So let's see if we can get Clear Sky to work again. Go back. Northern Lights. And it seems like it's this Sky Dome. So, I guess that's that. But yeah, here we go. So if there's anything that's been announced that's new that I haven't went over, please leave it in the comments. But I think that will be all for today, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!